What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we are going to be looking at a special Magic card. This is actually upon request. Special thanks to Veritas, who in my Twitch stream, super cool dude. He specifically wanted me to look at Garruk Cursed Huntsman, and I gotta say, no reason not to. This card is awesome, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So we're looking at a 6-drop Planeswalker, starting loyalty of 5. That is an awesome rate. It's perfectly fair. It's right. Like the card, like the mana cost for the starting loyalty here is just really good. You've got a solid body as far as planeswalkers go, and so it does cost 6, and it is Golgari. So okay, interesting. So it's 4 generic, 1 black, 1 green. Now he's got three loyalty abilities. No passive, mind you, because that's how planeswalkers ought to be, in my opinion. No passive. Let's get the passives out of here. Those are for enchantments. Like anyway, but it does not have a single loyalty ability with a plus on it. Now, but it functions differently than the Elspeth, Sun's Nemesis, that we've seen that also does not have any plus abilities. In this case, Garruk has a 0. And with that 0, you create two 2/2 black and green wolf creature tokens with, when this creature dies, put a loyalty counter on each Garruk you control, or Garruk, or however you pronounce that. So that's actually really awesome because if you have multiple planeswalkers that are Garruk, because there are a number of different versions of him that have been printed over the years, if you have like 2 or 3 Garruks in your deck and you have multiple of them on, this would synergize with all of them. That's bonkers. That's available to you here, which is pretty cool. And if I'm not mistaken, Garruk has always been mono green. So the fact that when he's cursed, he becomes green black fits. That's kind of cool. I like that. Yeah, so that's interesting. Then, okay, what are his other abilities? He has a -3, destroy target creature, draw a card. That's pretty cool. Like nothing wrong with that. And then -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control get +3/+3 and have trample. So his ultimate is only 1 loyalty off from where he starts, and you are able to up. I mean, but you don't have the ability to just straight up uptick him. You have to kind of jump through some hoops in order to get that loyalty where you want it. Now, there are some ways around that. There are a lot of ways around that actually, in some pretty cool fashions. Pretty cool fashions? Sure. You can do cool things with this. So there are a couple of options that you have. So one, the fact that you're creating those wolf tokens, you can really lean into that and go crazy with those. And look at areas where cards synergize with wolves. You know, like Talsimir comes to mind. He's a planeswalker, or not sorry, he's a legendary elf who is Selesnya. So in this case, you would be looking at going Abzan, so black, green, and white, because he's white and green. So that's not crazy. That's, you know, they have one color in common, so you can make that happen. And so that's okay. So if you do end up going in that direction, if you do end up building Abzan, you get a Tulsimir, and then all of the wolves would actually get bonuses as well. So they'd become bigger. And they're black and green. So actually, the old school Tulsimir from, because there have been 2 versions of Tulsimir printed. One was from War of the Spark, Tulsimir Friends of Wolves or something like that. And then the other one, for the life of me, I cannot remember the name, but it was from the original Ravnica block. So Ravnica City of Guilds. And in that one, that one actually gets it gives +1/+1 to all green creatures and +1/+1 to all white creatures. And so in this case, it would create so these wolves would become 3/3s. And I believe Tulsimir Friends of Wolves gives like a +1/+1 to all wolf creatures. So that would work as well. So that's a synergy you can lean into if you want to go wolf tribal. He all of a sudden would fit into that strategy pretty nicely. Also, if you're running aristocrat style effects where you want to sacrifice creatures to create cool effects. So like Priest of the Forgotten Gods comes to mind. If you have Garruk and a Priest of the Forgotten Gods down, what you ultimately end up doing is you you drop Garruk on turn 6. You use a 0. You have 2 wolf creature tokens. Your Priest of the Forgotten Gods just chilling there. She's a 2-drop. You've presumably had her for a while. Then as the game, your opponent goes, at some point during their turn, when it's appropriate, you crack the Priest of the Forgotten Gods, sacrifice both wolves, and all of a sudden Garruk is now has 7 loyalty on him. And so now next turn you can just immediately down tick him to 6. And so you've had him in play for 1 turn. You've gotten a free trigger off your Priest of the Forgotten Gods, which is a really great effect. So just have bodies you can just block attackers and then chuck to that is really phenomenal. That's the other thing. If you are running any kind of sacrifice effect, that you can do at instant speed, always, 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 under almost no circumstances. I can't say never because you should never say never. Um, you should almost never do it before your opponent has had a chance to swing. Intercepting blockers is one of the things that you can do with things like the Cauldron Familiar, like the cat oven combo that we all love to hate. Like that becomes possible, or you're able to absorb attackers with that. That's freaking sweet. Like, and that's value you can get out of having those extra bodies. Now, it doesn't work if the attacker has trample or some other kind of evasion, but in general, it works well. And Garrett gives you the opportunity to soak up two blockers, and they're two twos, like with no other intervention. So you are getting some kind of bonus there. I mean, that's not nothing. You can get some decent value there. You could potentially kill on oncoming attackers as well with those. So that's pretty great. So he protects himself, he absorbs attackers, he slows things down. You get the ability to uptick him with those bodies, especially if you can sacrifice him to other effects. Things like mutual destruction, where you sacrifice a creature in order to destroy another creature, like these are exactly the bodies you want for those type of effects. Because the moment he down ticks, all of a sudden you have a permanent overrun. All of your creatures get plus three, and you grant trample to absolutely everything. Now, with Planeswalker Ultimates, kind of the traditional Planeswalker design is you have some kind of plus ability that gives you a little bit of value. That's fine. You have a negative ability that is significantly more value and like pretty decent. And then you have an ultimate, which if you've hit the negative ability, the chances of you actually getting to the ultimate in a game is incredibly low. But a lot of the old school ones, their ultimate might as well have just said you win the game. Like it's so powerful and so oppressive when it hits. And Garruk is the design on this is awesome because Garruk's ultimate gives you an emblem that in the right circumstance, if you have a board, if you have attackers, all of a sudden they become significantly more powerful. But you're not just winning the game outright. Or if you are, you already had an advantage. If your opponent is capable of wiping the board, that emblem does nothing. If you don't have creatures that can attack, this doesn't help you at all. Now the cool thing about that is Garruk does synergize with himself in a pretty cool way. So you can zero tick him multiple times. You can create a huge army of wolves if he's allowed to go unchecked. And that alone can win you the game. Like his zero can just straight up win you the game because like so many other planeswalkers, it's a snowball that can just pick up and just run out of control if your opponent can't respond to it. And that puts your opponent in an interesting conundrum because do they want to kill the wolves? That's a tough question. And it really depends on what's around them because the 2/2 wolf is itself a threat. That is a sizable body. And the fact that you get two of them right out of the gate, that means that they are tough to deal with. You need to respond to that. All right, so that's something. That's not nothing. And so naturally your opponent is going to want to kill the wolves because they're a threat that is going to be coming at them. But at the same time, if they kill the wolves, then they're going to be powering up Garruk and getting them closer and closer to that -6. Or at the very least, they're able he's able to downtick more consistently and destroy creatures and draw a card. So that's the other cool thing about Garruk is no matter what stage of the game you're in, no matter who is in charge, no matter how well the game is going, if you are dominating the board, if you already have a very strong presence and you are in control of the game, you can drop him down and just add icing and just like smash a nail into the coffin because you're just going to immediately start creating value and start creating those wolves, which at the very least can block for you if nothing else. So you're going to just get phenomenal value there. If your opponent had like one pesky blocker, all of a sudden he's a kill spell that can get you in for the win. Like, he does what you need to do if you're ahead in the game. But also, if you are behind in the game, he gives you something of value. So he does cost 6, he's expensive, but as a way of just kind of turning the game around, what you can do is if your opponent has one creature that is just dominating the board, you can just throw him at 6, down tick him for 3, destroy the creature that's the biggest threat, draw a card so he immediately replaces himself in your hand. And you now have a Planeswalker that's chilling with 2 loyalty that next turn, if it goes unchecked, can start creating these wolf tokens, which could be a problem. So this is all good. There's all good stuff here. Because then the other thing about that is even if your opponent has a way to deal with Garruk, they have to spend their resources to deal with Garruk, even if that means attacking him for 1 turn. That's still at least 2 damage that doesn't go to your face. That is significant, believe it or not, or at least it can be. If it's a close game, he has the potential to really swing it no matter what part of him you use. And that's awesome. The other cool thing is, if somebody hits him with like a murderous rider, you still get the wolf creature tokens if you hit the 0. And then the other cool thing about that is, if you cast another Garruk, so if you cast him separately, or if you like use an Aid the Fallen to pull him out of your graveyard, or do something, or like an Elspeth Conqueror's Death, like 3rd chapter pulls him back out, and those wolves die, all of a sudden, hey, guess what? He still gets those loyalty counters because they only care that it's a Garruk you control. They don't care that the name is Garruk Cursed Huntsman. They don't care that it's the same Garruk that put them on the battlefield. Those wolves don't care. If Garruk is down, they will give Garruk their loyalty. It's awesome. Like that is so cool. The other cool thing you can do with this, you can use Proliferate to immediately crack his ult. So if you have a creature that allows you to proliferate, now I can't think of any standard versions that will allow, like standard legal cards that will allow you to do this super easily. Although I suppose there is a white spirit that when it deals combat damage, you get to proliferate. So you can probably do it with that. Um, the name is escaping me right now. But if you had something like that that would allow you to proliferate the moment you play it, on the very first turn, you can hit his ultimate because you just need to proliferate once to get 1+1+1, or to get 1 loyalty counter on this thing. That's awesome. Awesome. It's so good. Like seriously, you can, and the thing about that -6, the thing about his ult is giving trample to an entire army and buffing them all by 3 is phenomenal. If you have more than 3 attackers, that probably is going to win you the game. Probably. Not guaranteed, depending on what board you're swinging into and what other kind of shenanigans they may have up their sleeve. But that gives you a colossal advantage. Like, it's huge. I can't speak enough to that. And so the cool thing is, this guy is in Golgari. He's Golgari. Yeah, actually, there's when with the Elspeth Conqueror's Death, 3rd chapter, if I'm not mistaken, when it brings a planeswalker back, you can put a +1, you can put 1 loyalty counter on it. So if you get Garruk with Elspeth Conqueror's Death, you just get to ult him immediately if you want to. Like that's amazing. Like that's so cool. Yeah, this card rules. It's phenomenal. And the thing is, at 6, it is very, very expensive. And because it's very, very expensive, it's fair. Like it has a very high power level. And as a result, it is incredibly strong. But it's expensive. And because it's expensive, and only because it's expensive, you won't see it really blowing up things in standard. And the power creep, which I talk about a lot on the show, things have become super fast and things have become super um, just everything is just cranked up to 11. Everything is incredibly powerful. You get value the moment things hit the board. If something costs more than 5, if something costs 5 or 6, like you had better be winning the game with it that turn or the next turn at the absolute latest. And the thing is, Garruk is a an amazing setup piece. He's great at what he does, but he is fair. And right now, cards that are fair don't really see a ton of play. And the synergies that exist with Garruk don't align with the synergies that are currently available in Standard. Um, although, actually, there is one synergy that he has with a lot of the stuff that's going on in Standard right now that is noteworthy. So if you have him in a Yorion deck, so Yorion is the bird serpent that allows you to flicker stuff. You might know it by the time that it flickered the Agent of Treachery like 6 times, and you smashed your keyboard. That one, that particular bird serpent, if you have Garruk in your deck, you can do an interesting thing because with planeswalkers, whenever a planeswalker flickers, so when they leave the battlefield and they come back, they're treated as a brand new permanent. And as a result, you can activate their loyalty abilities again. So if you have Garruk down and you throw him out of the battlefield, you hit him at 0, then you blink him out with Yorion, put him back in, sacrifice the 2 tokens to something like a Woe Strider. You can then hit the -6 and you can keep Garruk online at 1 loyalty. Then if you can flicker him again using, again, if you had Yorion and Thassa, just to do some kind of that nonsense, or if you had like Charming Prince or some other mechanism that would allow you to blink Garruk one more time, he would then blink back in with 5 loyalty and you can start doing it again. And you'll have the emblem at that point. Like you could do that all theoretically in 1 turn. Like that's awesome because his uptick, it only requires that the wolves be there and that the wolves die. It doesn't matter if they came into play that turn or not. It doesn't matter if they came into play with that Garruk or not. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with him. But again, he is a very powerful setup piece and a very powerful value engine. His you win the game mode, or like his like hammer to the or like knee to the throat moment, happens at most on turn 7 unless you're running a lot of ramp, which if you're running a lot of ramp there are more powerful things you can be ramping up into. So it's one of those where if you were to ramp into it, it's because you want to, in which case I salute you, go for it. I want to see that deck and I want to see it work. Yeah, it's fun. Like you could do some really really fun things with this guy. Actually, Migration Path now I'm realizing could be a fun use for him. I'm just so perfect scenario. Turn 1 Gilded Goose, turn 3 the giant, or no, turn 2 you can hit the giant, and then you got what, 5 mana down on turn 3. There's got to be a way. I'm thinking the best way to get into to ramp into a migration path that can get you into Garruk. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to do it on turn 3. I suspect there is. Somebody in the comments below, let me know. And when I say there's some way to do it on turn 3, I'm referring to cards that are currently standard legal. That's the format that I'm thinking of. I have no doubt in modern, modern or legacy with all the fast mana, you can get this guy down on turn 1 if you really mean to. You may have to mortgage a handful of cards in your hand, but I'm sure you can do it. Although with Chrome Mox banned, I don't know if that's the case anymore. Or not Chrome Mox, what was it? Mox Amber? Or was it Chrome Mox? Anyway, there's a Mox that recently got banned in Modern. That's the one. The thing I'm talking about. You know the one. Yeah, the one. I think it was Chrome Mox. Anyway, doesn't matter. Garruk, Curse Huntsman, he's awesome. Also, the flip side is the flavor on this guy is super cool because he's a blending of 2 really cool things. You have Garruk, who is this really big barbarian planeswalker who has been like the mono green axe wielding, like chest thumping barbarian in Magic for a really really long time. And then you also have in Eldraine, you have all of the fairy tales. And so what they did was they found Garruk, who was a kind of this wild huntsman barbarian, and what they did was they assigned this character that already existed to the role of the huntsman from Snow White. And that's kind of fun. That allows them to leverage a character that we already know, that we already love, that also we haven't seen in a very long time. Like Garruk hasn't been part of the story for, I want to say, like 3-4 years or something like that. Like he's been out of the picture for quite a while, and all of a sudden, like he's back, and he fills a role of the in the fairy tale realm in kind of a cool, fun way. Like I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do that more. Although I suppose with War of the Spark and everything, a whole bunch of people dying, like, all right, I guess, um, I suppose it's not illogical that they didn't go. When I say a whole bunch of people, I mean Gideon and Dak. Like that's really it. But anyway, whatever. Dak Faden, who didn't even appear on a card in War of the Spark. What the hell? Anyway, sorry. Totally different rant for a totally different podcast. But I thought that was cool. It was an elegant way of taking a property and a character that already existed and putting them into a world in a way that made sense. And that was just efficient. And I have a lot of respect for that. And I think they should do more stuff like that. Like if they have more sets that are themed that in that kind of a way, I'd like to see this stuff more. Anyway, so this has been Garruk, Curse Huntsman, super cool. So Veritas, shout out. This one's for you, buddy. And yeah, it's just tons of fun. I hope you're having an awesome day, awesome night, staying safe out there, washing your hands, all that fun stuff. Take care of the people you love by staying as far away from them as you possibly can during these crazy times, and I will catch you next time.